Hello Exiles. It's been about 1 week since Mirage League launch and I wanted to give an update on the Poison Spark Pathfinder League starter. Short version, the build does work. It's a solved archetype after all. But unfortunately, I actually have to stop playing it. Mirage also added some interesting new tech for the build that improves clear speed a lot, so I'll show that first and then go over the swap to Spark and how the build has been performing. First, the new tech that was added this patch. Now there is some interesting new tech from Mirage League involving Animate Guardian. Previous Poison Spark setups often used Dark Marionette Spectres for their self-revive mechanic, so that Guardian's Blessing could maintain a temporary haste aura. Personally, I always found that setup annoying because the Spectres constantly died in maps. In Mirage League we got a new support gem called Companionship Support. It's very cheap and not very popular. It gives a huge more multiplier to minion life as long as you only have one minion, and there is even a 15% of hit damage from their life modifier. So instead we can run an Animate Guardian with a very large life pool and give it explosion gear to help with map clear. For example, the Guardian can use a Cane of Coolie Mac and Gravebind to generate on-kill explosions. This works very well for the Haunted Mansion strongbox farming strategy that I've been running. To keep the Guardian alive we simply use a life flask with her, of the Necromancer suffix. Next, let's go over the transition to Spark. We leveled as Toxic Rain Pathfinder and switched to Spark once we had about 3 Divines. That was enough for the core setup: Vinespike Cordial Anoint, Inextricable Fate, and a basic Rearguard Widowhail Quiver setup. Once we swapped, we started mapping in around tier 12 maps while finishing Atlas completion and slowly investing into the character. Progress has been a bit slow this league since I haven't had much time to play.
I should raise my fees. It's a gilded. It seems every dog. Really? All right. All in order. I'll let you know.
Now let's go over the main gear and interactions. For offense, the core mechanic is still the Vinespike Cordial Anoint combined with Inextricable Fate to allow all damage to poison. Next, a Widowhail combined with a Projectile Speed Quiver, which is very strong on Spark scaling. A good budget or defensive option is Rearguard, which gives capped attack block and 45% spell block with a mid-rolled Widowhail. On the passive tree we take the Exceptional Performance Cluster for skill effect duration, and then some damage over time nodes that also have duration. This works very well with Poison Spark since longer duration increases both Spark uptime and poison stacks. For mana sustain we use Replica Sorrow of the Divine. To keep that flask up permanently we use the belt Tides of Time. If that's too expensive, a rare belt with flask modifiers plus some flask medium cluster jewels works as a temporary solution. For single target we use Soul Ascension. This build normally lacks cast speed, but Soul Eater stacks solve that very quickly. To scale that further we use Righteous Fire of Arcane Devotion, which scales the increased cast speed from Soul Eater with a more multiplier. A Silver Flask gives Onslaught for additional cast speed. And the underrated flask, Dode Ray's Elixir gives free power, frenzy and endurance charges. This helps with elemental overload uptime. For defense there are a few key layers. First is Frost Shield, which gives a big boost to effective hit pool. It's particularly good on builds like this, that have high percentage mitigation but low hit points as Frost Shield adds raw hit points. Then a Vitality Watcher's Eye with life gain on hit for spells. Spark hits extremely frequently, so this is very strong sustain. Next is a Permanent Life Flask, combined with Petrified Blood. This allows us to heal up to full life rather than low life when using Petrified Blood, so it makes Petrified Blood into a max hit increase rather than a max hit decrease compared to most other builds. One downside of this interaction is that your character becomes weak against damage over time, but this is not a problem with this build because of the amount of healing we get from our life flask. One interesting interaction is that you can increase the amount of healing applied to damage if you take damage to mana before life, such as with Mind Over Matter. Since we use Replica Sorrow of the Divine, this becomes a kind of free mitigation because Life Flask healing is also copied to Energy Shield. However, since we use Doppelganger's Guise and Divine Flesh, damage will bypass Energy Shield, so we can't use Mind Over Matter with Divine Flesh. So that's the current Poison Spark Pathfinder setup with some of the new Mirage tech. The character isn't fully complete yet, but unfortunately I actually have to stop playing the build. Part of the reason is some annoying game mechanics. The Drought Monster aura that siphons Flask charges is extremely dangerous for this build. It's been a while since I played Pathfinder and I forgot about this mod. If you can't sustain Replica Sorrow of the Divine, you can't cast anything. The same issue happens with some Exarch Altar Flask modifiers. But the real reason is my wrist. This build requires pressing the Life Flask constantly to maintain the Vine Spike cordial condition, and the wrist pain has been getting pretty bad. So I have to stop playing the character. If I were going to continue the build, these would be the upgrades I'd aim for next. A rare ring with damage over time multiplier. Fixing chaos resistance to enable Divine Flesh. Switching to the Foulborn Blue Nightmare setup to convert all lightning damage to chaos, which frees up the boot slot and removes the ramp from Grasping Vines. Enlighten and Rune Graft of the Treachery to run Arctic Armor. Chaos Inoculation Impossible Escape for +1 Curse. A perfect rolled Widow Hail with a +2 Pierce Rare Quiver, this is a breakpoint to get 7 pierces. And eventually a Progenesis. So overall it was a very fun build, but it has a few mechanical downsides, and the flask management is painful, literally. In the next video I'll probably talk about the Mirage farming strategies I've been testing and which ones actually feel profitable so far. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.